Hey everybody. Yeah, N is on vacation, so I guess I'm back to hosting. How do you guys like my new haircut? You like it? Well, either way, this is my response to all those questions. The response to his questions will be posted in the description, as well as the reply to my questions. Having said that, here we go. Waldo asked, do you believe that the tax collected in Exodus 38 through 35 and 30 and 28, and the thousand of virgins from Numbers 31 are proof the Israelites were in the millions and not the 20,000s. And he asked, if not, then why not? And to answer this two-part question, no, and because there are other explanations which I will get into later. Alright, so this altar thing, me and Waldo just cannot seem to come to an agreement on this altar. His second question was, do I have anything besides the Bible to say Joshua was the one who built it? Well, no, but an altar automatically implies the builder. At the end of the day, Waldo's whole bread and butter of his argument against the altar is, well, we don't know for sure that Joshua existed. This story was written 400 years ago. How can we trust it? How can we know that this wasn't just some made up story? At the end of the day, Waldo, I'm not gonna dispute dates of writings with you because that's a whole nother debate within itself. But I'm gonna put it to you like this. For the sake of argument, I'm gonna grant you, yes, the story of Joshua was written years after the altar was built. We're not going to take into consideration any notes, oral stories, or otherwise written down stories that they could have just based it off of and used as reference. At the end of the day, even if I grant you that this story was written 400 years later after the altar was built, that does nothing to shake its accuracy in my mind. This 400-year-old story, despite being written 400 years later, was correct in telling us what this thing is, what we could expect underneath it, what age even of the things underneath it we could expect. It was very good accuracy in locating this thing. And also, thanks to the story we have attached to this thing, the altar, we now know why there are artifacts from a certain date, why there are scarabs from a certain date all around it. Now, Waldo tried to, I think in his response to my question, Waldo tried to say, well, that's like saying somebody built a castle. And, well, there's some artifacts from this culture around it, and therefore this culture must have built the castle, even though they wrote the story about them doing it so long after. We don't just have artifacts to go on here. We have lots more than that. We got an entire story, accuracy, and how it was used and what was used on it. And if I adopt your theory, Waldo, that the Israelites, that this altar was built and used, and then 400 years later someone happened upon it and wrote it into the scriptures, well, I still have a lot of questions yet. What's with all these Egyptian artifacts around it? Why do they all seem to be from a certain date? See, these are still questions that linger in the air if I accept your theory on the matter. At the end of the day, At the end of the day, if a story, regardless of when it was written, can be proven to be 99.9% accurate, and there's just that one thing we can't verify, call me a fool, Waldo, but I'm gonna have to give it the benefit of the doubt. I see no reason to doubt the story of the Exodus. With all the things it's got laid down to a T, I'll take its word for who built it. And the story may have been written 400 years ago, but it is still accurate. This theory that Joshua never existed and they just pulled the name out of their rear end to attribute an altar to and write a story about, gonna have to see your evidence for that. And so far, you haven't presented really any. It doesn't matter to me if there's this one thing we can't verify. If everything else in that story can be verified, as well as add in a little extra explanation as to why there are these weird artifacts and pottery around it, I'm going to have to go with it. You got to give me a reason why I should doubt the Bible when it says that, when the Bible's already been right about so many other things. Yeah, the date of the artifacts, the date of the animal remains underneath it. It's all a little too strong of a case to just dismiss as, well, it was written 400 years ago, and we don't know if Joshua existed. Waldo's third question, I think I answered before I even got done reading it. I don't. Essentially, it was, how do I know for certain that when the Israelites refer to Semites, when the Egyptians refer to Semites, that they're talking about, how do I know for sure they're talking about the Israelites and not the Arabics? I don't know anything for certain. That's something that I'll always say. But the term Semites is used to refer to a group of people. If they were just talking about Arabs, then they probably wouldn't have had much of a use for the term Semite. The fact that they're using Semite and not just referring to them as Arabs goes to imply there's more of a grouping of cultures there, not just one. And I'm not familiar with any other Semitic cultures besides Arabics and Semites, the Israelites, that could possibly be. They use the term Semite, so we can say within certain they're not just referring to one group of people. And his fourth question was, I forgot it. Either way, to finish up that third question, this is just an example of how the Egyptians would use these, what I call the umbrella terms. For example, there are these things that people have found called habu slaves. Now, people have theorized that since this word sounds like Hebrew, these may in fact be the Hebrew slaves. But then again, we can't know for sure. We don't know who these Habu slaves really were. We know that they were foreign slaves because of the way they're depicted in art, but at the same time, that's about it. So, there's lots that we don't know due to the Egyptians and their umbrella terms, but that just goes to show you it wasn't just the Arabics or one certain group. They used Semite to cover more than one culture at a time. His fourth question was something along the lines of, there were Jews on islands and we found their writings, and they don't seem to be aware of any of biblical history, Moses giving the commands, anything that happened in Egypt. Now, this could be dismissed as, well, they just didn't write about him. We got the papyrus that Waldo mentions, but as far as I know, that's about it. Also, I'd like to bring up the fact that not all the Jews left Egypt. It does say not in the Bible, but in other historical Jewish books, that some Jews did stay in Egypt. I may have to end up pleading a little bit of ignorance on this question. I don't quite know a lot about these Jews on these islands or why they would not write or mention any of this stuff. But ultimately, just because they didn't doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It didn't mean that they weren't aware of it. At the end of the day, I'm very excited for my closing statement. This debate's finally wrapping up. I'm half certain that Waldo did this before Valentine's Day to try and get a tactical advantage on me. Um, but either way, I'm just messing with you. Those are my response to his questions. Links to his questions and his response to my questions will be in the description below. Having said that, I get to make my closing statement first, and then Waldo will finish it off. There you are.